Manga, or for anyone who's uninitiated, the black and white comics that anime are based off of. And the fact that they are black and white leads to, in my opinion, semi-common problem. What happens when the artist gets a little too complicated with what they are drawing? That is when manga coloring comes into play. Manga colorings, whether they are done by the mangaka themselves or fans, or the companies that distribute the manga, help to visualize the manga itself and give it a little bit more clarity. So, how do you do that? Especially and specifically if you want to color in Adobe Photoshop. That is what I'm going to be going over in this video. So, strap on your boots and let's color some manga. So, the number one thing that you want is obviously a manga panel or anything black and white. You can do this. This technique does work for restoring old-timey black and white pictures if you have them digitally scanned and online. But just for the sake of this, we're going to be using a manga panel. This is going to be the inside cover of My Hero Academia Volume 11, featuring Tomura Shigaraki. So, the number one thing that I will recommend you do before you get started coloring or anything is get comfortable in your chair or whatever you're sitting in, because manga coloring needs you to be in one spot consistently for a long time. You can move around, but only after you do one color spot. You can move around while you're doing that one spot, but the odds of you messing something up and having to redo either a section or the entire chunk gets a little bit higher. So, what you want to do, this is your manga panel. First off, you want to go to image. It is very important. Go to mode. Make sure that you are in RGB color. Any of the other options will not work. Maybe the CMYK color, but RGB is just a safe bet. That is what I use all the time. Secondly, depending on what you want to do for your color, background is fine, but layer 0 is better. Layer 0, if you want to add in a background behind it, will just save you some time towards the end of your color. It's just a simple click, that's it. So, you want to decide what section of the panel you want to color. So for this one, obviously, we want to color the section with Tomura in it. So what we'll do is use the crop tool and just crop down your panel. So move in your lines to the edge borders of the panel. For this panel will also cut off the text on the top and some of the text on the bottom, which makes life a little easier. You can leave this up there, and actually I'm going to just because I think it'll look cool towards the end, but I am going to get rid of the bottom simply because I want to. That's what a lot of manga coloring comes down to, is you can go into this wanting to be as professional and specific as possible, but a lot of this is how you want to do things. So, now that you have your panel, and if you had a page that has multiple panels, that would be obviously cutting that panel out and getting it isolated, resized so it's not too pixely. I prefer when you're at 100% zoom in, it's a fairly good look at the panel. Anything higher, zoom in for this distance from the picture will make your color too blurry. Anything lower for this just makes your image higher res. That bigger is always better for manga colors, but this size is fine. So the next step of what you want to do is you want to have, especially if you can with anime, have a reference image. So I have this panel of Shigaraki from season 5, and it has all the important aspects for this color. Obviously you have the hair color, you have the skin color, you have the scar color, you have the teeth, even though teeth will just be straight white, and you have the disembodied hand color. All of these are the important colors for this, because as you see, there are the disembodied hands, there are his hands, there's his face, his eyes, his teeth, his scars. The one issue that we'll have is his eyes, and just so we can get that out of the way, use your eyedrop tool in your reference image, and if the color isn't what you want, you can always adjust it. Use your eyedrop tool. This is one of the biggest changes that I have made since I started manga coloring. Originally, in my very first tutorial for manga coloring, I said, and I quote, make sure your colors are selected down here for the foreground and background because it'll just make it easier. I have now come to the realization that that is really just not needed. What you can do is just take the color code once you have good color for it and just copy it. So you want to Control C, copy, and just leave that color picker. It'll leave the colors you have selected already selected, which is fine. We don't necessarily need those specific colors there. Next, the actual stage of your manga coloring. And I will give this warning because if you have reference, you need to make sure you click out of it, which is why you will see me leave my layers column open a lot because you can see which one you're on. So what you want to do next is select the spot you want to color. And obviously the main issue will be how do you select it? What do you use? So the lasso tool. There are also the polygonal selection tool, the quick selection tool. There are a lot of them. They all have their uses. I have defaulted to the lasso because it gives you the most specific selection. So what you want to do is you want to select the area you want to color, which for this instance is the eye. And I don't know how well it will come up with the pixels, but I went a little bit out of the eye line. So this is your introduction to your hotkeys. You will want Alt to get rid of a selection if you have made a mistake in coloring that section, and you will want Shift to add into that color. So since we have one eye selected, we go to the other eye, hold Shift, select that eye, boom, both of his eyes are selected, and then you can clean up the bottom there, but that's his eyes selected. And then what you want to do is you want to go to layers, go to the half circle, the circle with half black, half white, and then you want to go to gradient map. And then that is when your foreground and background colors will come into play. So this far color, the color on the left of this line will be your line art. Always keep that at pure black unless you're going for a different effect. And then the color over here is the color that you want that section to be, the lightest part of that section to be. So earlier we had the color, we just Control V that in, and now that we have it in the actual panel, we can see it's a little too bright, so we can adjust it as we see fit. I think that will look good. Now, certain sections will benefit from this half section coloring. His eyes don't exactly have the most detail to them, they don't have the most shading, but you can add a gradient stop into the middle of it, which will add some depth, but for this we're just going to leave one gradient map or gradient stop. So next what we want to do is we want to find out where we want to color next, and just to get the big part out of the way, we will do his skin. And this is when we're going to introduce the dear viewers to the most important part of this video, the time lapse, because there's no way I'm going to make an hour-long or so video explaining colors when I can just time-lapse through the selection process. But long story short, with this technique, especially if the person is wearing anything that you are going to leave as black, you don't have to be too specific about selecting around the wrists and stuff. Just make sure you don't select any of the hair. Staying on the black line will be your best friend. Which is also why when you change the line art color for any effect, that is your biggest risk, is that if you do not have the full line thickness selected, there will still be a black border around it, which will make it look weird. The biggest part of manga coloring is patience. Like I said, you want to get comfortable where you're coloring because you are going to be there a while. There's also the option, I don't do it, but you can if you want, of coloring nails a slightly darker skin color than normal. I don't do it just because it doesn't add a whole lot. I would do it if Shigaraki canonically had painted nails, or if I was going for a fan color and I wanted to give him painted nails. But we're just going for a as close to anime accurate color as we can. So we're just going to use skin color. It won't change anything. And if you look at our reference art over here, his nails are the same color. They didn't bother changing them, so we won't either. And this is when we get into the little up to you selections. but I always like to analyze the sections around. So for this, we're doing his hand. Over here, there's a section of hair that, if you weren't looking, looks kind of like a finger, especially with the line right there. So you just want to make sure you are looking closely at what you're selecting, making sure you're not making any mistakes. It's not the end of the world if you do make a mistake. There is always Control Z. It is your best friend with these things, which I should introduce. So say I do this, and I have that selection, and then I want to alt this entire section out, and then whoops, I cut his finger. You can just use Control Z and it will undo it. These are some basic Windows hotkeys that it is just useful to know for any artist. So if you have Photoshop, I would expect you to know Control Z, but just in case you don't, there you go. So we have that finger selected, and we're just going to keep selecting his hand all the way down there. Clean up there. Run that over here. Down there. I always find it super useful if, when you do a section and once you know that you have it selected, so for here we're doing the knuckle section. So once we have enough of the line selected, I always like to use that to get as much of the material over here as I can, and then loop it as close to the start of the selection as I can. So see that again, to do this finger, I start at the bottom of that side. I want to loop down here, get that side selected, and then bring it over here, and boom, connect it. That way, when you release your thing, so say I release it here, it'll just select in a straight line to where you started. So it's just easier if you have direct control of where you're selecting and get it as close to how you want it as possible. Okay, now that we have both of his hands selected, this is when we get into his body, like his chest and his face. So, one thing that I will say is, when you have something like a scar that you want to use, or that you need to color, there are two options for that. One, you can select the scar in your color, and then you can do something retrospectively afterwards, which is select the scar area and add a solid black chunk to it and lower the opacity until you get a nice color. That is always an option. But the option I like to go for, and that I always kind of push, is don't shade it or don't color it at all. That way, when you want to do a color map specifically for the scars, you are doing it specifically for the scars. Meaning you don't have to worry about how close you can get to what you want. You can use the direct color from the reference for the color. You don't have to just hope that lowering the opacity of the black chunk is going to give you a good result. Also, this is going to introduce us to another big issue, which is characters that have hair in their face. So Shigaraki has all this hair in his face. It's just a very patient game of going around his hair and selecting the skin. Again, like I said, there are other tools to select the areas with. The lasso gives you the most control for your area, so use the other ones however you see fit. I just won't use them. I'll offer a little bit of experimentation for you guys to do if you're interested in doing this. So it's always nice to zoom out, see the full picture every once in a while so you know what all you have to select. And when you have sections of the same color that are touching, it is always nice to just run them together so there's absolutely no worry about them having an awkward white line between them. Even if it's just a pixel or two, it just kind of breaks. It makes it a little easier just to connect it all together. See what all is connected. This panel didn't have a very clear marker for where the top lip scar was. So you have to, with some colors, you might just have to guess where some lines are. And other panels will just straight up not have lines to finish off some areas. So you'll be able to you can go into the line art and add black lines to just make it look like it ends which is what I personally recommend, just because it makes it look like the colors aren't just existing there. They make it look like they are being controlled by the lines, which is kind of what this color technique boils down to, is that the lines are dictating the color. And then we have a little bit of section over here. I'm pretty sure that's it for the face. Nope, I have some up here on the other side of this. So right over these kind of sections are the ones that will make or break your color. The ones that you might not have seen the first few times you looked at it, which is why you want to give it a fresh pair of eyes every so often. Zoom out, see the full picture, because it's very real that I could have just missed that top section of his skin, and the color wouldn't have been significantly worse, but there would have just been an awkward white spot, or there would have been hair where there wasn't supposed to be hair. So it's just nice to get that good, consistent look. And now that we have most of his skin selected, not all of it, I will show you guys this part. So it's the exact same process as the eyes. Get the color you want on your eyedrop tool. Make sure you have that layer selected. I tap it a few times just to make sure that the water or the eyedrop tool has selected that color. And another thing that you will notice is these colors are not the same as the ones for the main section. So what you want to do is, these colors, again, are not that important. You just want to copy the skin color and then go to your main section. So if you click out of bounds of the panel with the water drop tool still selected, it won't fuck up your manga coloring. So if it'll select my main selection, there we go. So if you click on the picture, it'll work for that. And I just realized I did not have his finger selected, so let's get that real quick before we finish this section. And again, we still do have his chest, but that's part of the tutorial. So I'm gonna leave his chest empty for now, and then we're gonna do that. So like I said, his forehead and his finger merge up because those are just two connecting sections of skin. And as you'll see, there was a little bit of a mistake. Hair was selected when it shouldn't have been, so you can do that. And then you can do this. And sometimes your eyes will play tricks on you and make you think the section is selected when it's not. So it's always nice to just check that it's not selected before you do that, because now that I'm thinking about it, odds are that area wasn't selected. And I just did that for no reason. But it's okay. So do the same thing. Go to colors. Go to gradient map. Now what will happen is this. It will take the colors that you had previously selected, and for these it flipped our black and our color. So we'll move that down, go here, go to the color, and paste it. Just so happens that it was a very similar color, but it will show you your live color. Now, I think that looks a little too yellow. So what you can always do is select a skin tone yourself. So as long as the skin tone looks like a healthy color, boom, that's a good skin color. Now here we will select a drop down color of about here. And there, let's go there. So what that'll do, as you move it, it will adjust the color. So if you move it closer to black, any of the darker grades will become that color. And as you move it over, the relationship with everything else changes. So we're going to move that to 49. It's a nice middle place. It won't do anything to the black lines, but it will do something if we select areas for it to do. Now, say you've done all that, you've fussed with it, and then you realized, like down here, oh shit, I missed a section of the skin. It's okay, you don't have to reselect everything. Just hit a nice Control Z, or if you've already done a different gradient map, so say we did the eyes after the skin, so we can't just Control Z, it'll just bring us back to the eyes. What you want to do is hold Control and click this area of that. It'll give you your nice little layout. It'll show you what all you had highlighted. Select the gradient map that you made a mistake on and delete it. And then it will, sometimes it'll do this depending on what you're deleting, and then just delete it again. Boom. You have the exact same selection. You just don't have the colors anymore. So you just want to finish that off. And now that you have the full skin area selected, you do the exact same thing as before. Gradient map, select, make sure you have black on that end, your color on this end, paste in the one you had copied. But if it's not the color you want, you can always, again, select your own skin tone. As long as you think it looks good, that's what matters. And you want to add in your mid-tone again. And if you want to add in a mid-tone, I will always recommend click over here. It'll just create a new one, and then you want to move this. Because if not, you might not get the same color. You might get a black. And then that just adds a whole list of issues. So, there. You have your skin selected. But one thing you might be seeing is even though the sections are cross hatched and shaded, it doesn't really shade like that. So say you want this area of his hand, or this area of his neck, or this area of his chest. Since he is a very thin person, he has these shading marks. So what you can do is use these lines as a guide and select the area. You don't have to be too particular about it because it is just shading. And this is just the beginning level of skin shading. There's an entirely other way I do it, but it is a much more involved process, and it takes a lot more time, effort, and it's pretty much a once you are finished with the color you do it, not really a while you're doing it kind of thing. But this is just kind of a way to add that almost, for lack of a better term, since this is my hero, that All Might shading, that very extreme level of shading that not all characters get, but sometimes it just kind of happens. So just keep selecting your shading locations. Okay, and say these are all the sections you want shaded. Obviously, we can add some on his face, but say we are just worried about shading his chest. But you see, like, some of these sections should probably be darker than over here and all that. So what I do is add a solid color and make it white. It doesn't really matter what color you make it. And then you want to lower the opacity to 0. So it is basically not there. It's just there so you can quick select everything. And then what you want to do is you want to use Alt and get rid of the section. Say you are going for the darker sections. So get rid of everything that will be shaded lighter. So this section will be darker. These will be darker. So I want to get rid of these. This will be darker, so I want to get rid of probably that. This is light. All the more densely packed sections. And then add a solid color, bring it to black, and then what you want to do is mess with the opacity until it looks good. So, there. I think that looks good. So at a 21% opacity, the darker sections look good. And then what you want to do is do the exact same thing as before, but just get rid of all the dark sections. And now you have the dark sections selected and colored. It will be a little bit easier to see what's what. So you can just boom, boom, there. So these are all the lighter sections. And then what you can do is solid color, do the exact same thing, but since you had it at 21% opacity for that, you'll probably have to bring it to a lower opacity for these. So that's how you do the rough shading. It doesn't look the best, but if you're just interested in getting some more depth, that's how I do it. And long description short, the way I do my extended shading is, say I want to shade this section. So make a new layer, color in this area. So this is the area I want to shade. And then what you want to do is you want to use your blend tool, or smudge tool, sorry, and you just want to get it to look nice. So you don't want to cover up the line art too much. You don't want, it's just more of a hassle to do it this way, which is why I didn't want to do this in a tutorial, because it's a very time-consuming process to do that. So I just always will say, if you want shading, find the way that works best for you. So some people will like this way, some people will like the smudge way, some people will do a mix of the two. But that is his skin selected. So all we have left is the hands, his hair, and then his clothing. But that might be okay to leave as is, just so it gives itself a little bit of default shading. But the one thing I would like to comment on is up here. The nice My Hero Academia Volume 11 thing. So if you follow this line and you click this and you drag it over here, you get a nice selection. You can pretty much just do this and select the entire upper border or upper section of it. And then say I wanted to color the white to look like blood, like a blood splatter. You can just use a gradient map and do that. So layers, gradient map, that'll make it blue. But what I want is I want the black to stay as a true black, and then I want this to stay as red. So red. But you might see that the background isn't a pure black. It is more of a off gray. So what you can do is go here and select somewhere that wasn't affected by the color. But that won't work because you are still in the layer option. So you are only worried about the section that you selected. So leave it at pure black for a second. Use your eyedropper, select this section. It should be a very slightly off black. And you want to make sure you do it on the actual panel, not on the gradient map, because otherwise it'll just give you a straight up black. So what you want to do is same thing as before. Copy that, go back to your gradient map, and change your black from the straight up black to the off black. So with this, it'll look weird because this isn't a true black. So I'm not going to do that. If I do anything, it'll be in the time lapse, and it'll probably just be for the My Hero Academia text. But that's how you do that kind of stuff if you're interested in it. And if it looks good, because again, it's all about making it look good to you. So, hair. In most manga colorings, the hair is directly next to the skin. And the skin and hair have a very interesting border. Because what you can do is you can just reselect everything. You can just reselect the hair, but then you might be missing some pixels here that you were worried about getting too close to the skin for. You might have gone a little bit too over here, so it makes the skin darker. So the better option is to select the skin. So that way we have everything that was selected for the skin selected, and select inverse, which, as it suggests, will select everything that wasn't for the hair. And then you want to use Alt and do what I would call a rough pass around the color and just deselect everything that isn't hair. So, boom, that's a lot of it gone. And another pass over here. A lot of it gone. We can carve a line up here, be respectful of the neck and all the hair around it. And then, boom, done there. And then you can just take in that. It's about the same amount of time because you still have to go through all the details of the hair, but it will just make it a little bit easier and a little bit more consistent so you don't worry about overlapping for the skin or not having the pixel selected and just having an awkward white pixel there. Thing I just realized about the shading, and this will help. So these are your shadings. So what you can do is make sure they are towards the bottom. That way they will still respect your skin color rules, and that way you can still fiddle with it and adjust it as you want. So for the skin, I had that middle mark for about a 50%. So the 50% opacity will do it roughly what that color was. Not exactly, but roughly. So it's just, again, all about finding that nice little middle ground and being happy with it. So I'm just going to reselect that stuff, get that resorted out, and then go back to the hair. Quick little note that I wanted to make. And again, like I said about having a character with black clothing, black background, same rules apply. If you want to abuse the black lines and not get too close to the hair, you can. I just don't like to because I get into a bad habit of doing it if I do. So I will respect as close to the hairlines as I can. But if you want to select all of this, if it was on a straight black background, you can. But when you do that, be careful that it is a straight black background, because if it is slightly gray like this one is, it will not color correctly. Unless you put the black stop a little bit more than just black, you'll have to put it for a fairly dark gray to be black. So I just don't want to fuck with that. So I'm just gonna be careful, make my decisions wisely, and take my time and have fun. That's a big thing about these. With how long they take and how often you have to just look at sections, and you might think, oh my god, I'm not even halfway around his head and I've been reselecting this for like 5 minutes already. It's okay. You're allowed to take a break, walk away from it. No one's going to judge you for it. But always make sure that you save your progress as a Photoshop file. That way you can come back to it if you take a long break for like multiple days, hours, even minutes. It'll save you time and hassle if you just make sure you save this as a Photoshop file, which I have not done yet. And another thing I'd be careful of if you abuse black backgrounds is if you want to give the background any kind of panache, if you want to get rid of the actual background and replace it with something else, you will have to reselect that section as close to the image as you can for that. Hence why I am doing Shigaraki like this, because I want to get rid of the background, so I'm going to. And to do that, I'm going to need to be as close to Shigaraki as I can be, just so I can void the background off as easily as possible. But if you're okay with keeping the same background as the panel has, more power to you. It's easier to abuse black sections than it is to follow lines. So as you see, we've made our way from here all the way around here with a very small mistake over here. We're forgetting to void out his cuff, which is again why it's nice to zoom out, look at the full thing every once in a while, see if you made any mistakes anywhere, get a nice roadmap for what you're going to do next. Because these shouldn't be hard. They shouldn't be something that you don't want to do. It's all about having fun while you do it. So if there's a panel that you think will look nice if you color it, and then you start coloring it and you realize, man, either this is just a lot of stuff to select and I'm not having fun with it, or this one section is giving me trouble and I'm not going to like how it looks, you can either save it for another day, or just don't do it. That's the joy about doing manga colors for fun, is there's no reason you have to do a panel. Like, sure, you might look at a panel and think, oh, that looked really cool if I could color it, or ooh, that panel has nice coloring potential. And then you might start doing it, it's like, ooh, no, like this panel has a lot of sections that aren't exactly separated by lines, which mean I have to guess a lot, which means the colors aren't going to look the best. Stuff like that, if you're in that mindset, won't look nice, then you don't have to do it. Basically what I'm saying is it should be fun. You should never really sigh when you look at a manga coloring that you want to do, because again, it's what you want to do, not what you have to do. Okay, so now that we have all his hair selected except for this section, I will start explaining one aspect that I haven't really touched on yet. And that is, if the line art itself is messy or like this, it has a lot of grays separating sections, you are always able to go back in with the marker or whatever pen you want to use. I will always select using a 1 pixel just so you don't cut into the art itself. And just touching up the line art, it's a fully up to you thing, but that's his hair. And then what we want to do is, of course, go to our reference, select the lightest section of his hair, which is this nice blue strand here. And especially with his hair, since the hair is such a iconic color, I guess you could say, for him, you want to get a color that you think looks nice. So obviously the light blue is going to be that color. So what you want to do is make sure that both of them are the same thing, just so you know, hey, that is the color. And then you, obviously, Control C, get out of that, go to your layers, make sure you're on your manga coloring, make the gradient map, and then throw the hair color in. One thing I will say is I forgot to deselect his mouth. So unless we want him to have blue teeth, I suggest getting rid of his mouth. And his eyes, right? Yeah, his eyes too. Again, it's always nice if you look at a manga coloring right as you're about to do the gradient map. Even if you don't notice it right before you make the gradient map, you'll notice it when you make the gradient map. Because something just won't look right. So, gradient map. It will again use your foreground and background colors to make it. Which is, for this, just straight up this color. Which, we want that color over there, but we don't want it for the black. We want this to be black. So you'll want to drag that over there, and then zoom out to see how it looks. And that looks pretty nice. I would have gone for a lighter blue, but I like that color. So, we don't have a whole lot more to do. It's just pretty much the exact same process for everything. And this is what I'll show for the scars. So, what you can do is select the skin again. And then select inverse. But since we just want these scars, we know exactly where they are. Feel free to cut literally everything else. So we will maybe not haphazardly is the right word, but we will slice everything out of the panel that we don't want. So that's that scar, so we want this scar as well, so we'll just purge pretty much this entire section, loop back through here, connect that. Meaning we only have the high and low sections to get out, and then just sections that we couldn't exactly get rid of all the way zoomed out. So then the hair right there, the hair over here, and just kind of, like, again, since it's just getting rid of the sections you don't need, you don't have to be too specific. And then specifically get rid of the sections that aren't the scar. So the whites of the eyes and the line art around the eyes are going to be that one. And then the mouth is going to be the teeth. So you'll just want to get rid of the teeth in the selection. Find the line you want to purge it off of, and boom. And that's right there, since that wasn't selected. And boom, his scars. So, again, what you can do is use your reference for your color. Go back to your manga color. And I forgot to copy and paste. So, copy out, move here, gradient map, there, paste, swap these so that it's that. That's what it would look like if we went with the screenshot for the skin color, but we didn't, so we're going to need to fiddle with that. So what you could do is either A, find the skin color, which is right here, copy and paste that, and then adjust it from there. You could always use the scar color, but since that's more for shading, I'm not going to. Again, it's an option. You can do it if you want. Hey. Yeah. Okay. Copy the skin color. Move to your scar, which is down here, I believe. Oh, that's that. This is why I haven't touched on it yet, strictly because I knew I would pick on myself for it. I do not label my layers very frequently. I'll do it every so often, but not that much. And then from there, you want to select a color that looks nice with the skin color, and I think that looks good. For that stuff, you mostly want to stay in the same area. You don't really want to move your slider along the side. There. Those are the scars. They're a little weird. I might mess with the colors to make them a little darker. But that's the general idea. You never want to move this. If you're going to make the scar color different and you're not going to go with the just black overlay on it, make sure it's in the same page of that. And then again, if you want to, throw in a medium to add a little bit more depth to the scar. You can always, for the medium section, if it's a scar, you can always throw in a dark red to make it look like almost blood, but it's not fresh blood, just the skin will always be a little red. So, like that. So that's those done. Which leaves us with one more section to do, and that is the hands. And these bad boys are everywhere. And they're not everywhere in a way that we can just select the hair, select inverse, and get them all off of that, or the skin, the hair, whatever we want to do. We will have to do the other one. So an idea you can use is, this is your skin. Use solid color. This is a very, very, very dangerous thing to do if you don't know exactly what you're doing. And this is the hair. So use, again, a solid color. Make it the same color, different color, doesn't really matter. And boom. So these are the skin and the hair sections. And merge those together. Combine the fill colors, merge layers, and then you can drop the opacity to 0. But again, that gives you the quick grab of everything. That's the hair and skin combined, which select inverse off of that will give you everything that isn't selected in those two, which will be the eyes, the mouth, the scars, the clothes, and the hands. And we have a rough go for the hands. But since the hands are two different sections, they are the hands themselves and the gold sections, what we will want to do is exact same thing as the shading for the skin. Select them all at once and then do the half and half treatment. So do part of it now, part of it after this. But for now, you just want to select everything to do with the hands. Okay. Thing I just noticed on this is obviously there's a little section of white or of blue. So what we'll do is basically a save state for the selection we have. So use the exact same technique as that stuff down here. Drop the opacity to 0. That's just your quick select. And since that is on the gradient map for the hair, what we can do is either just do this, redo the entire hair selection process, or redo the hair color selection process, and then go at it, or anything else, but I'm just gonna do this because it's, in my opinion, it's just the more straightforward option of fix the mistake, get it done and fixed as quick as possible so you can move on to what you were doing before. So using that force save state for your selection is always nice, because then we can go back down here, boom, we have everything reselected. Okay, now that that should be all of the hands selected, again, we can use a force save state for these, just so we have those easily selectable, and then we're going to want to do this. Since majority of these hands do not have the golden sections on them, we're going to get rid of the golden sections first. So we're going to just carefully cut that stuff out of every hand that might have one. So then what we want to do is exact same process. We have done this how many times at this point? go to the reference image, select the color, and copy, paste, throw it in. Adjust it if you need to, but yeah. So again, if you want to go for a more, if you want to go for any other color, if you want to go for like a green, you can. If you want to go for a bit of a darker gray, you can. It's all up to you. That is the fun thing about doing these colors, is it all comes down to what you want to do. Again, I'm going for as close to anime reference as I can get. So that's the hand selected. And then you want to use the force save state and then deselect all the sections that actually have color now. Gradient map. And since the reference image that I'm using doesn't exactly have that color, I can pull from memory or from a different monitor, whatever you want, and I know that they're gold. So that's that done. If I wanted to, I could call this is it. This is the finished color. And let's do a thing that I like to do. We're going to put everything into a folder, and then we're gonna just get rid of it. So folder. So this is everything we've done. That was the start and the end. I did this in a little over an hour, not considering the amount of time I lost talking compared to normal. And this is when, if you want to, you can always label. And then, of course, since you don't really need your forced save states, you can get rid of them. Since now you have everything colored, that's pretty much it. But an easy way in case you want to do a special background. So what you can do is what amounts to making a force save state for every single layer. It doesn't matter what color. So if you force a save state for every layer, you just need to do the ones on the most out. So we have hands. Those are on the extremes, so we need a save state for those. What else is on the edges? Hair is on an edge. It's a lot of the edges. Force a save state. That. Skin will be on the edge for a few sections. Actually, no. Yeah, over by the wrist. So what you want to do is solid color, save state, boom. And the issue with this color in particular and how I did this is I do not have a save state for his chest. So now I would have to go in and manually select his chest. And the thing with this color, and the benefit I will give it for being a black shirt on a black background, is you don't have to be too particular about the sections you have. So like this already works for what we need. So we can force a save state for that. And then what we do is select all of the forced save states, and then we want to right click and merge layers. That way we have everything selected that we need. So if we select this, select inverse, we should get everything gone. And since it's on a layer 0, it'll let us do this. So just everything gone. And I realize I didn't. So I realized I made a mistake. And then we just want to make sure that his eyes also get deleted. So save state those. Combine that with that. Merge layers. Now everything should be okay. So then we want to do this. Select inverse. Make that invisible for now. And then we want to go to layer 0. And you get a nice erasure. Assuming you didn't make any mistakes in your selections, but again, Now that you're outside of this, what you can do is add a solid color, and it'll just give you a straight background pretty much. This is how you do minimalists, in my opinion. You can just slap a white on top of it or any other color, and you get pretty much that minimalist art that people like to use for backgrounds on like laptops and stuff. You can make your own. So like white is how you get it if you want. Since we were using white for the pop of each color, that's how you get that. But like you do this to any manga panel and it'll work. But what I want to do is I want to put that on top. So then if we shift this to black, we can see if we made any mistakes anywhere. I don't see any stray pixels, so I think we're good. So I want to get a color that merges with his outfit, which that color works perfectly. So there. That is a manipulatable background. And we got rid of the My Hero text, so I'm going to actually... Again, Control Z is our best friend. That is everything. That is our selection. Real quick... Okay, now that I have that text, I'm going to do the save state erasure thing that I have now done 3 times. And what I used was the quick selection tool. You can kind of see why I didn't want to do it, because it's really hard to manage. You have to keep fighting what it selects and deselects back every so often. So it's just kind of a headache, but it's usable if you don't want to if you just don't want to mess with certain things. Okay, so now that we're back to the point that we were, but now we have the My Hero text, I want to do something with that. So what I'll do is go to... I'm trying to think about what I want to do. And what we'll do then is, again, a very personal choice. It's up to interpretation and up to taste, but I personally don't like there just being text in my colors that I didn't do anything with. And I don't feel like going through and giving this a color gradient. So what I'll do instead is use this to my advantage. So use this general area, and we're going to give it a solid color over. And then we're going to try to blend it right here. So right at the point that it, right there. Okay, it went under. That's why. And then over. There we go. So he has a nice void there, so there's nothing going on down there. So I can then... And then what you can do is just drag it all the way up so that its color is always above it, or above anything below it. And then, personal choice, you can give it a border. I'm going to give it a very thin black border just so it can help separate it from the art itself and the background. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to crop the top of it down just so the color itself is condensed. There's no wide open selection there. And I'm probably going to go for center 3. And then, again, any small adjustments you want to make. If you want to add more blood splatter to the background, if you want to change the text, color, any border around it. Because, like, if I didn't want the border, boom, I can just get rid of the border. And honestly, I kind of like how that looks more. So I'm going to keep it that way. I'm not going to give it the background or the border. So that is how I color manga. This full recording took an hour and 24 minutes from beginning to now, and that's not considering any of the stuff that editing Tristan time-lapsed out. But yeah, this is my full coloring technique. Sure, I didn't go in depth about my in-depth shading techniques, but that's not what this is for. This is just for a basic intro level tutorial on how I color manga. If you enjoyed it, let me know by hitting the like button. And if you're new here and you just found out how to color some manga from some random guy on the internet, I would greatly appreciate if you like or subscribe to the channel. It is free. That's definitely not a joke stolen from another YouTuber. But I want to do more art stuff like this on the channel in general. So people subscribing from this video will let me know, hey, maybe that's what people are interested in. Until next time, stay safe, have fun, and do more art. Okay, guys. Bye.